Thank you very much, Brandon and colleagues. I hope I managed to fix my background picture. Does it look fine?
It does, yes.
Great. Yes, it's the new reality of the digital communication and collaboration. I'm really happy to join today the colleagues, the partners, the distinguished guests of the summer school. And really present a very brief bird's eye view over the topics which will be discussed and looked into within this summer school taking place over a few days. In addition to myself, a number of other IOM colleagues will review delivering on very specific topics. But we thought that it would be good to really go very quickly through the main policy areas and challenges, but also opportunities related to migration, human mobility, and specifically in the context of labor migration, employment, and development. Indeed, this is the area which is absolutely close to my professional work. I had the division in IAM headquarters in Geneva, and looking into the policy areas, as already mentioned, labor mobility, development, diaspora engagement, financial inclusion, remittances, but also integration and social cohesion. So I'm particularly thrilled to be delivering this very quick keynote intervention to the audience in Tunisia, where I was last time, and the first and last time in 2017, within the context of a closing conference of the mainstreaming program, global program on mainstreaming migration into development, where Tunisia was also a pilot country and remains a pilot country of the current phase of this program, which we implement together with United Nations Development Program and a number of governments across the world. Indeed, the topic of impact of migration on development, how to exert benefits from human mobility is not new. It has been already on policy agendas for quite some time. But the reason why we continue talking about this topic is because it's not such an easy and straightforward area, because indeed it requires a lot of coordination, partnership, and response not only from a single agency, but really all sectors of society, all policy areas and sectors. And these are the few points that I wanted to highlight. Moving forward, let me just mention the three myths which continue to persist, both globally, but also within national agendas in different countries, different regions. And I'll try to say a few facts to dispel those myths, but also towards the end mention a few initiatives which might be of interest to the partners and different participants of the summer school, specifically where I am is taking
là où je me trouve.
How we So, going to the three myths which I promised to look into. The first one, there are still a number of experts, stakeholders, different entities, organizations who want to present migration and human mobility as something new, as something which is right now on the agenda of governments, something which hasn't existed in the past. And of course, it's not up to the audience in Tunisia for me to explain that that's not true, because as I mentioned during my trip to Tunisia in 2017, I still am under the impression of the atmosphere of your museum, where your renowned expert explained how human mobility has been always the part of the Tunisian society. The mobility has been connecting different societal processes, trade routes going through the country along the Mediterranean route, and that's not something new. This has been there all the time, and it's not the only corridor. Globally, human mobility has been connecting societies, countries, across economic ties, but also cultural ties for centuries and not only decades. So understanding that this is the reality is absolutely crucial, so that this is not questioned. I think today we already heard about the latest global estimates of the population. Indeed, we speak about almost 281 million of international migrants, but that does not take into consideration the estimates of internal migrants or irregular migrants or temporary migrants. So indeed, we speak about at least 1 in 7 migrants who are in the world present within the global population. Of course, COVID-19 has brought a lot of challenges and interruptions to connectivity, to human mobility, with lockdowns, with border closures. I myself was just crossing from Switzerland into Germany 2 days ago, and I was really surprised to see indeed the border guards looking into the documents, which is very, very unusual for us being based in Europe, to see these interruptions. But looking forward, as we see vaccination programs proceeding despite the new mutations evolving, there will be connections. They will continue connecting societies because it's so much intrinsic to our work. The trade will continue, the tourism will resume. Of course, there will be specific protocols which need to be placed in terms of ensuring health security. Why am I so confident that migration is not a temporary phenomenon which can disappear? Because it's not only related to short-term perspective, but really fundamental drivers of human mobility are there. The shortages of labor markets in developed countries and countries with high level income will remain. Demographics imbalances will remain. So indeed, right now we're not about finishing human mobility, but really looking into adjusting existing frameworks and policy agendas. So myth two. Myth two, which I wanted to say a few words about today, is the fact that it's very pronounced in the policy agendas of various stakeholders that migration is bringing burden on society, is bringing risks, and it's really something which is associated with negative impacts. And this is, of course, has been already confronted today by various esteemed speakers before me. So I don't want to reinforce the same facts which have already brought by different colleagues in terms of the fact of contributions of migrants to economic development. The McKinsey study from 2016 has been quoted that migrants, although presenting 3% of population in the world, are contributing with 9% of GDP. Also, the multiple studies demonstrated the important contribution of migrants to labor market inclusion, that it's not necessarily that migrant workers are taking away jobs. On the contrary, migrant workers are taking jobs, are getting employed, and then are opening up, for instance, opportunities for employment for local population. Entrepreneurship among migrants is particularly widespread. We speak about, for instance, in Italian firms, around 9.4% of those newly created firms were created by migrant populations. Indeed, migrants are represented among small-scale enterprises, but also among those countries of Fortune 500. If you look into the nationality or citizenship of their founders, you'll notice that around 43% are created by CEOs with migrant origin. So I don't want to repeat also those overwhelming facts. In addition to economic contributions, migrants bring, and displaced populations are bringing also contributions to diversity, cultural ties. And again, talking to colleagues and everybody in Tunisia, I remember being at the other of the Mediterranean Sea in the Spanish region of Andalusia. and really visiting mosques and churches where indeed Christianity and Islam are coming together and coexistence of societies. I think this is the impact. This is the image of diversity, but yet inclusion, which we need to continue keeping in our minds and moving forward, continuing to work together to ensure that migrants are truly included and part of our whatever we do of the changing world of work, that they are not left behind. So the third myth, which I wanted also to address today, is that migration or challenges related to human mobility could be solved or resolved by a single country, by a single stakeholder, or unilaterally. Indeed, there is a belief that the work can be done in one policy area without really taking into consideration the implications on other policy domain. And this is something we need to continue working on together, because migration is not just one policy domain, say, of security, border management. Migration is solidly understood now also as an important dimension which has to be embraced by ministries of labor, ministries of education, ministries of finance. The whole of government perspective should be present. Only then we manage to ensure that migrants or displaced population groups are not invisibly present in our societies. This was indeed demonstrated by COVID-19, that migrants were present in our societies, but really not truly included. And those societies which have incorporated migrants in their response to COVID-19 have benefited and incorporated the challenges and addressed the challenges of the pandemic in the most effective manner. If you remember last agricultural season of 2020, we hope that in 2021, moving forward, governments and partners will work together to ensure that migrant workers going to the agricultural enterprises in the countries which are used to receiving migrant workers, that the responses and frameworks for this mobility will be up to the important challenge of ensuring access to dignified working conditions and proper employment contracts and protection. This is absolutely crucial because we have witnessed that COVID-19 exposed some of the irregularities of informal employment of migrant workers, challenges of accessing social protection system. This results in a suboptimal outcomes, not only for migrants, but also receiving societies, for employers, because it fuels really negative attitudes towards migrants and disturbing the social cohesion in the communities. Integration and policies are crucial, and they are not just policies when we advocate for changes of behavior of migrants only. We always have been speaking about the importance of a two-way street approach, that it's really societies also embracing the diversity, embracing the cultural richness from new populations joining those societies, and coexistence, co-creation. These are very big words, the words which all of you probably know. But how do you move forward and really undertake important concrete steps in this complexity, in the complex policy agenda? Let me say a few words about what our organization is doing. You will hear about policy responses, initiatives a lot within the summer school. I'll just mention them briefly to highlight what exactly is happening, and we are really looking forward to collaborating with the partners and stakeholders in Tunisia as well as other countries to ensure that those processes and initiatives are really not remaining global initiatives, but really are trickling impact in specific country or regional contexts. So I spoke already about partnership and importance of working together. In addition, to working and be in the UN Migration Agency, of course, we understand and perceive very seriously the notion of us serving as also coordinator of the United Nations Network for Migration. And for us, that means embracing collaboration across the UN family with various UN partners on various topics. I spoke about the multidimensional agenda of migration, that it's not only one part of the UN family which needs to be brought on board. Of course, UNHCR is our standalone partner with whom we've been working many, many years already. But also other UN agencies are becoming our partners. Let me just mention a few interesting initiatives that are emerging with various stakeholders, but also within our organization itself. One point which becomes very crucial for us to keep in mind is that we still need to work a lot in terms of enhancing data and understanding of human mobility. It's been there for ages, as I said up front, but we still need to learn more and still need to continue working on the development of migration data systems, but also bringing migration into the other data systems and processes which are out there. Of course, in the context of labor migration and migration and employment, it's crucial to continue improving labor market information systems, so that when we conduct a labor force survey, that we are capable of capturing information on the situation of migrant workers specifically. There, what is interesting is that in addition to improving the statistical surveys and instruments, we are working to enhance the capacities of administrative data sources to generate reliable data on labor migration and migrant workers. Also, a new trend is about enhancing real-time labor market information systems by partnering with private sector. For instance, not only looking into the supply data on the characteristics of migrant workers or workers in general, employment data, but also vacancies. The labor market demand data is absolutely crucial. There are some initiatives and ideas working in this direction. In the data context and understanding migration, it's also important to embrace human mobility as a factor which is relevant for the whole humanitarian migration and peace nexus and domain. There, an interesting global initiative, which we are piloting right now in a number of countries, and welcome to Tunis to join this initiative, is by developing a driver diagnostic so that we bring migration dimension into the context of any analysis, be it within the UN system, common country analysis, or by government institutions themselves. How to ensure that our responses to support of migrants are particularly relevant. Partnership with national governments, I mentioned already the importance of not only working with one part of the government, but across ministries, across stakeholders. A very interesting initiative which I would like to draw your attention is our work together with UN agencies on developing sectoral guides for development cooperation partners in terms of how migration becomes relevant for sectoral policies and interventions on education, for instance, on trade and private sector development, on health, on employment. So these guides are being finalized right now, and we would be happy to share them and also see how to pilot them in the context of Tunisia and collaboration with various development cooperation partners. Partnership with private sector and specific and civil society is absolutely crucial. This is where our work within the context of supporting compliance with ethical and fair recruitment standards becomes very interesting. In various parts of the world, we are engaging with in bilateral cooperation with specific companies, multinationals, but also their associations. And very soon there will be a global forum on ethical recruitment and fair recruitment. And I think my colleague Philippe Hunter tomorrow will speak about the important work that we do in the context of promoting IRIS standards of certifying recruitment agencies, but also developing, enabling policy and legislative environments to support that work. Another point which I wanted to mention is emergent realization of the importance of skill dimension, the human capital approach towards regulating human mobility. And this is where skills mobility partnership, which is not a new area of work in Tunisia, is also an interesting approach that has been conceptualized. We have a paper presented to our governments, and we have launched a global skills partnership together with ILO, UNESCO, and other partners, trying to really bring this human capital dimension in designing labor mobility schemes before departure, in migration, and upon return. This is also where, for instance, one can learn some lessons from our initiative on comprehensive information and orientation program, which we are piloting with governments in the Gulf. Final point, and I'll stop here, is the importance of mobilizing and working with, when we create design schemes, is the embracement of the fact that migrants are not just goods or financial assets, they are stakeholders themselves. And the migrant-centered approach becomes absolutely crucial, and nowhere else as important as in the context of partnership with diaspora organizations. It is because of this important realization that diaspora are not just sources of capital and resources. Diaspora are stakeholders who can really enrich our work in the countries, both where they come from, but also where they reside. This partnership with diaspora mobilized in a launch of iDiaspora platform, which we are rolling out across the world. And this is a platform for diaspora organizations which we facilitate, because diaspora organizations have proven once again the importance of working with them as partners. In the context of COVID-19 response, we organized global discussions, and a lot of very interesting observations have come up from there. Let me conclude here. Of course, there's much more that I wanted to share with you, but the time is limited. Plus, you'll have still a couple of days in front of you to be able to discuss further all those important policy domains and messages. I hope this was interesting. And I remain at your disposal to answer questions once the time for question and answers comes. I'll stop here, and all the best for you for the summer school.